Every once in a while, there comes a moment that sparks a light for greatness. And although that spark may not be immediate, it eventually comes when an individual relentlessly moves towards a goal. Moments like this notion that come to mind are when Michael Jackson first performed the moonwalk on Motown 25 in 1983, when LeBron James won Cleveland's first championship in 52 years and first championship in franchise history, when Beyonce came out with her first single as a solo artist, and many, many more. All the aforementioned moments were achieved by immense passion, sheer grit, and determination. Only through those traits can anyone hope to emanate something truly special. And for Kei Tsukishima, that moment is showcased right here. However, what's significant about the moment itself is the journey that preceded it. See, in one way or another, we all had the conduct that resembled Tsukishima. We all felt, at least once, purposeless. Nonetheless, for whatever reason, as humans, we all long for a chance to capture that moment of happiness. We desire to pursue something meaningful to validate the chaos of our journeys, and this tenet is beautifully displayed through Kei Tsukishima. I think a good place to commence the discussion is at Kei Tsukishima's childhood. Now, the key takeaway from Kei's childhood is his relationship with his older brother. Like many young children, Kei idolizes his older brother. In his eyes, Aketeru is Superman, the coolest guy on the planet. Kei sees his brother work hard every day at volleyball, and even goes as far to call him the ace of Karasuno. Aketeru was Kei's hero. And heroes have a massive influence on our behaviors and habits. Heroes shape us to do the right thing, dance, sing, and strive to be better. They define our fundamental belief systems. Therefore, suffice to say, Aketeru played a huge role in Kei's early childhood. Kei was bright-eyed and excited about volleyball. He wanted to know every little detail about his brother's experience at Karasuno. Kei's passion for volleyball was fueled by his admiration of his brother. However, this illusion of Kei's dissipates once he realizes the truth. When Kei goes to a Karasuno game to give his brother the shoes he left at home, he cannot find him anywhere on the court, and much to his dismay, he notices his brother cheering on the sidelines. This moment overwhelmed Kei so much that it would be the catalyst that altered his demeanor from a bright-eyed enthusiast to a dreadful nihilist. Kei's paradigm was utterly shattered in minute pieces. With Aketeru's deceit, he broke his brother's heart. And what makes matters worse is that this whole dilemma would have been avoided if Aketeru admitted his shortcomings from the beginning. It's reasonable to assume that Kei would have at least respected his brother's ambition, but instead, Kei becomes hardened. He observes how being insufficient hurts his brother. Therefore, Kei completely disengages in volleyball to avoid this pain. He becomes indifferent so that he can never be affected if he wins or loses. Consequently, Kei Tsukishima loses his passion for volleyball. Now, this nihilism is what brings us to present Kei Tsukishima. Despite his gargantuan frame and innate intellect, he demonstrates little to no effort to excel as a volleyball player. In fact, he ridicules Hinata and Kagayama for trying to improve their weaknesses. For instance, he makes fun of Hinata for his height and Kagayama for his king of the court past. Although on the surface they can seem like petty jabs, intrinsically, these insults are projections. Seeing teammates like Hinata unafraid of failure and judgment makes Tsukishima insecure, as someone he towers over shows more valiancy than him. So it stands to reason that with the more feats Hinata accomplishes, the more pathetic Tsukishima looks. Moreover, at the Tokyo training camp, members of Karasuno even begin to question Tsukishima's commitment as a player. After his idleness at practice and ditching his teammates, Tsukishima's apathy catches up to him. For instance, Ukai begins to question if he can even keep Tsukishima at a starting position, despite him being the tallest player on the team. And Hinata begins to question if Tsukishima loves volleyball at all. Later on, Kuro invites Tsukishima to join a practice session with Bokuto, Levi, and Nakashi. Tsukishima initially denies this proposition, however, Kuro manages to provoke Tsukishima's pride and succeeds in his coercion. And although this scene serves as comedic relief, it simultaneously plants the seeds for Tsukishima's development. During the scrimmage, Bokuto compliments Tsukishima for being good, but criticizes his blocks for being weak. Following, Kuro advocates for Tsukishima to take volleyball more seriously, or else he'll be clipped by Hinata. These avocations strike a nerve at Tsukishima, but are true. Kuro only states the obvious, which is that the one who chooses to work hard will eventually beat someone who is talented if that talented person is complacent. Kuro indicates that despite his short stature, Hinata overcomes his shortcomings and proceeds to do what is seemingly impossible through his hard work. In contrast, Tsukishima was gifted with his height and intelligence, but is simply lazy. But Tsukishima fails to comprehend this notion. He fails to understand the reasoning as to why someone would dedicate so much effort and devotion for a sports club. Afterwards, Yamaguchi gets the impetus to question Tsukishima about his commitment to Karasuno. Yamaguchi asks why Tsukishima limits himself despite his gifts. Tsukishima then proceeds to call Yamaguchi and the others foolish for trying so hard even though they will eventually lose. Tsukishima's cynical remark agitates Yamaguchi, who then professes that his failures as a clutch server crushed him, but he continues to work hard so that he can do something he can be proud of. And this answer shocks Tsukishima, as his formerly timid friend stood up against him for the first time. But Yamaguchi's rebuttal also inspires Tsukishima to approach Bokuto and Kuro to ask their reasoning as to why they pushed themselves. Bokuto answers that he fell in love with volleyball when what he practiced yielded him to have a badass moment. And with his new accolades, it proved to him that his hard work paid off. Bokuto further states that he doesn't care about the future when he plays, and that when he plays for the moment. See, what Yamaguchi and Bokuto portrayed to Tsukishima is that although failure is inevitable, it should not be something to be afraid of. Instead, it should have the connotation of being a stepping stone. And although the journey in attaining such a badass moment as Bokuto describes is painful, once attained, is so gratifying. And with this shift of paradigm, Tsukishima begins to better comprehend the passion his colleagues have. Now I want to discuss two more encounters Tsukishima has with his brother, his former hero, and Hinata, his antithesis. When Tsukishima encounters his brother, he asks him why he continued to play volleyball despite not making it on the team. Then his brother answers because he loves it. Following, Tsukishima encounters Hinata, and Hinata asks if he believes he'll be able to halt Ushijima's strikes. And Tsukishima rejects the idea that he could never accomplish such a thing, further invoking his defeatist mentality. Tsukishima then jokingly asks Hinata how he ordains to climb the top of the prefecture. Hinata answers simply that he just has to beat everyone, and if Tsukishima is not up to the task at beating Ushijima, then he'll just have to do it without him. Now this answer infuriates Tsukishima, and I believe the reason for this is because Hinata is bluntly calling out Tsukishima's inadequacy. That when the going gets tough, Karasuno can win with or without him, which strikes a nerve at Tsukishima's pride as he's basically being told he's not needed. Later on, Tsukishima plays with his brother at a scrimmage game with college players. One player in particular, Abikawaza, teases him for being frail, which causes Tsukishima to become more frustrated. This frustration then leads Tsukishima to approach Kochukai for advice on how to block spikers who are stronger and taller. Ukai is surprised by Tsukishima's express initiative and obliges to help him. After receiving help, Tsukishima returns to his brother's scrimmage for redemption. He then applies Ukai's advice and completely blocks Abikawaza's spike, resulting in him showing a smirk signifying his satisfaction. Now this moment plants seeds for something greater. Building off the epiphany Tsukishima had at the training camp, I believe that Tsukishima was fed up with himself. I feel that after hearing those harsh words from Hinata and being ridiculed by Abikawaza, Tsukishima was met with a harsh reality. He realized that his apathy had caught up with him. Like stated before, Tsukishima was getting by with his natural gifts, but his laissez-faire attitude caused him to decline. He had to look himself in the mirror and admit that his critics were right. He had to admit that Hinata could eclipse him, that Bakuto and Abikawaza were right in calling him frail. And most importantly, Tsukishima had to realize that he did not want to lose like his brother. Thus, a change had to be made. Remain pathetic or rise up to higher standards. Now, all this progress for Tsukishima is advantageous. However, it is all null unless he can utilize what he learned on occurrences that truly matter. And the perfect place for Tsukishima to prove his competence is in the finals match of Karasuno vs Shiwatsuwa. Initially during the match, Tsukishima stumbles when his finger is jammed after failing to block a spike sent by Ushijima. However, Tsukishima acknowledged that the reason as to why his finger was jammed was as a result of his self-doubt. Before even attempting the block, he believed he would lose. Realizing his mistake, he seeks to rectify his error and goes all out, and to everyone's surprise, becomes more spirited. With his newfound determination, Tsukishima covets to block Ushijima. With this additional drive, Tsukishima almost becomes a new character, as he is way more cooperative with his teammates, especially with Hinata and Kagayama, who he vehemently disliked. He also becomes the lead strategist of his team by providing quickly formulated plans to counteract Shiwatsuwa. With these occurrences, we see Tsukishima really coming to his own and playing a vital role in Karasuno's defense. And with this momentum, he comes closer and closer to his goal until this happens.
That's the moment you'll fall in love with volleyball. Yeah!
Tsukishima blocks Ushijima, winning the set, a feat no one thought was possible. And with this feat achieved, Tsukishima lets out a cry of joy. This is the moment he was waiting for, the moment that everyone strives to have. To know that your efforts availed to accomplish something so magnanimous. And from this moment sparks Tsukishima's obsession to win. Later on in the match, Ushijima delivers a serve that ends up causing Tsukishima's finger to bleed. Many would see the circumstance as an excuse to surrender. However, Tsukishima's passion overrides his pain. As Tsukishima rushes to the emergency room, he vows to return and yells at Hinata to buy him some time, exemplifying his strong faith in his teammates. But most importantly, this determination serves as a source of motivation for Karasuno to keep on fighting with vigor. And although Tsukishima is being treated in the ER, he finds no time to rest, as he conjugates different tactics to aid his team. And upon his return, he helps Karasuno even further in the last push to beat Shiwatsuwa. To great acclaim, Karasuno defeats Shiwatsuwa. However, after receiving a great deal of praise, Tsukishima finds himself discontent with himself. He gripes that out of 5 sets, he was only able to block Ushijima once, and that he should have done more. Now this self-critique of Tsukishima is unlike the previous ones, as the previous ones comprised of pessimism. This one is based upon a desire for a higher standard. And this is where we see the true growth of Tsukishima. It's after he has tasted some glory is when he truly gains the confidence to aspire to more possibilities beyond his current reach. And when Yamaguchi reassures him that they are reaching nationals, Tsukishima grins. He grins at the new possibilities beyond the horizon. The same taste he had fighting Shiwatsuwa will be satiated tenfold once reaching nationals. At nationals, Tsukishima will face new opponents, new challenges, and more opportunities to grow. The reason as to why I love this character arc so much is because it greatly showcases the process one has when discovering their passion. When Tsukishima lets out that cry after blocking Ushijima, that was one of the most satisfying moments in anime that I have ever watched. And that's because we saw the journey. We saw what happens when someone does not relent in front of an obstacle and finally achieves their goal. That moment was rightfully earned by Tsukishima. And like Tsukishima, we can sometimes find ourselves to be lost or purposeless, and this ambiguity can make us nihilistic. We begin to think to ourselves, what's the point of pursuing anything if the pursuit consists of uncertainty and pain? Oftentimes, the easiest road is one that gives us an out, or an opportunity to surrender. It's hard to fight for your dreams, especially when it's constantly met with disappointment. It's way easier being hopeless like Tsukishima than being high-sprung like Hinata. But as we can see with Tsukishima, is that when we wallow in that darkness, we become depraved, and that depravity makes us privy to any brighter opportunities. If we continue with our heads down, we fail to look up at the more optimistic opportunities. Yes, losing sucks, but it is necessary. We mustn't look at pain as a hindrance, but as a step in the right direction. There's a reason as to why I titled this video Tsukishima and the Pursuit of Happiness. It's because I saw similarities between Tsukishima's journey and the journey Will Smith's character had in the movie named The Pursuit of Happiness. And in the movie's ending, Will Smith's character finally gets the job he wanted after numerous desperate attempts. Then as a result, he's astounded and breaks down in tears of joy. That moment, that brief moment of elation, is what Will Smith calls happiness. And that moment mirrors the exact moment when we see Tsukishima falling in love with volleyball. In that moment, Tsukishima captured happiness. And I believe that every one of us, at least once in our lifetime, has desired to capture such a moment in our life. The quest to achieve such a moment is formidable and arduous. But trust me, once that moment is seized, you'll then realize that all your efforts were not futile, but worth it.